Renowned artist and architect Kyong Park recently guest lectured at IE School of Architecture. During his visit, Mr. Park discussed his work and the education of new architects with Associate Director Jose María de Churtichaga.
Our school is very concerned about new boundaries, new fields and new ways to be an architect. In some way, I think you are moving in this cross-discipline landscape, moving across science, arts, architecture, and many other fields. How do you see the evolution of the architect in the actual society?
Well, I think architecture, in my opinion, remains still a very traditional practice, concentrating on largely on the issue of design, which is important. But I think now that we're beginning to realize that the tradition of specialization it has reached its maximum potential, and there's more interest to have a building of relative relationship between different specialized fields. And education has to increasingly form that way in a boundless situation so that we get to know about expertise and ideas from other fields. And architecture becomes a much broader field than it is now.
And talking about boundaries, that does take us to roots. And one of your last work about the Silk Route, I see in some way a kind of new kind of drawing, a cross-section of the world, no? I see you as an architect making a cross-section in a different way through cultures, through landscapes, through problems. So I find it a very clever and interesting way to operate. What do you think has changed on you, this work on the Silk Road?
One example why the Silk Road is important is the New Silk Road project is important to me is that, first of all, to recognize the old Silk Road as might have been one of the earliest examples of what we popularly call today as globalization. But more importantly, that the old Silk Road was a route of exchange of culture, exchange of knowledge, exchange of a spread of new inventions and new products as well. And this was a route in people develop relation to one another. And I think that globalization, which I consider to be more fragmented and networked examples of building relationships, sometime I think that we should look into in the older form of Silk Roads, in which that there was a direct physical routes connecting different places. And I think through that experience, we can maybe learn something new, what contemporary globalization could, in practice, achieve in a better situation. Yeah.
Do you think this international approach is a key question for education of an architect today?
Well, international aspect of future society is increasing and inevitable. I think most people would agree with that. Of course, the local reality are also just as important as the international or global construction. I think they have to be coexistence, that one should not really be dominating over the other. I think it's something that we need to learn from the lessons of the last century where, especially in architecture and urban planning, the internationalization or the, let's say, the Western, I would say a bit of a cultural aesthetic colonization of space and time has shown us that it's not effective throughout the world, that we need to invite and learn from the local bottom up, let's say, globalization from below as well. But we need to take a look at the condition of internationalism of this century.
You also define yourself as a shrinking and expanding architect. Now, these terms are interesting for me. How do you manage those physical forces? What does that mean for you?
Well, the work in shrinking city projects organized in Berlin. And the work before then, what I did in Detroit, one of the great shrinking cities of all time. And now I'm looking at expanding cities in Asia. So it's about drawing comparative conclusion that I always believe that you cannot understand one city unless you understood all other cities. So this is very important for me to be able to compare the two ends of what a human formation would be about.
Thank you, Mr. Park, and thank you for being here. We are very proud of having a man like you because we are in some way very close to your ideas as a School of Architecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.